All right, now we're ready to find the derivative of secant x tangent x. This one we do have to apply a rule to, and the reason why we have to apply a rule is because these two are multiplied by each other, secant x times the tangent of x. And we know that multiplication isn't nice and friendly like addition is. So we can't just multiply the derivatives together. Instead, we have to use the product rule. And so here's my product rule formula. If you remember, we had the product rule that we talked about. F times g of x, the derivative is the derivative of f times g plus f times the derivative of g. I often will use the words, the derivative of the first times the second, plus the first times the derivative of the second. And all we have to do now is come to our problem and identify and go, oh, this is going to be the f in our equation, and this is going to be the g in our equation. And so all I'm going to do is I'm just going to write those down very explicitly over here and write f of x equal to secant of x, and g of x equal to tangent of x. And then what I have to do is I have to kind of ask myself, well, what are the derivatives of these? And now what I know, because I have to look these up in my notes, you could remember them, and actually it's not impossible to remember them, but the derivative of secant x is secant x tangent x, and the derivative of tangent of x is secant squared x. So the derivative of secant is secant x tangent x. The derivative of tangent x is secant squared x. Please write your x's in here. If you leave the x's off, it doesn't make any sense. Let me just give you a quick aside, right? So if I write secant by itself without an x inside, that's the same as writing a square root without an x in it. Square root doesn't have a lot of meaning without an x inside of it. So always put your x's inside so that you're taking the secant of something and not just have those letters laying out them there by themselves. But okay, now that we've got these f's and g's put together, it's now just a matter of putting them into our product rule formula. So let's put them in our product rule formula, and we get the derivative of the first, secant x tangent x times the derivative of the first times the second, which is tangent of x. And I ran out of space, so I'm going to put my plus and then come right down below, plus the first, which is secant x times the derivative of the second, which is secant squared x. And if you wanted, we could simplify this. But you know what? I don't care so much about simplifying right now. I really just want you to be able to put the things in the formula and have it correct. By the way, there is another way you could have done this problem. We could have switched secant into 1 over cosine and tangent into sine over cosine, and then used the quotient rule and the chain rule and combined them together. So that would have been a correct way to do the problem, and you would have gotten an answer that is the same at this, but it would have looked really quite a bit different. But as in all these problems, feel free to create your own way. Feel free to go your own direction. And if you're unsure if you got the right thing, come see me. Come visit in study hall hours, and we'll verify if these answers are actually the same or not.